And I'm going to click here. And pull that over. And pull that forward. Alrighty. Yeah, so we'll get going here in just a minute.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So how else have things been going? Things rocking over there like crazy for you too?
They are.
Fantastic.
Things are very busy. Good busy, but you know, it's just a lot to manage.
Right.
A lot to keep on top of.
Yep. Yep.
Everyone wants everything yesterday.
Well, why wouldn't they? I mean, that's just the name of the game, is it not?
It is. It is. It is. But yeah, I don't know. It's been going good. It's exciting. It can be frustrating to like not be able to get all the things done you want to do.
Yep.
But if you step back and you think about it, it's like, oh, this is great to have all these ideas and initiatives to act on, and yeah, it's a good problem. Good problem to have.
Always a good problem. Yeah, I enjoy it as well. And there's the challenge there of time management, which is always a blast.
Yep.
So.
Well, that's easy. You just delete appointments on your calendar, and then suddenly there's free time.
Well, that's what I do. I mean, you know, or decline anything that comes through that you don't want to do. You're just like, I don't like this event. Decline. Pass the buck a lot.
Meeting with my boss. I don't need to do that.
Right,
Cancel that.
Hey, Shawn, I want you to talk to this client. You know, I'm really not the specialist for that. I don't know anything about Revit. I really can't talk to that topic.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Pull that one frequently enough, and then people stop asking you to do stuff. And then due to a mistake in finances, you're still getting a paycheck, but you don't have to do anything.
I think that's how it works.
You know, I'm working towards that. Maybe so. I don't think so. That's not the way I'm ever working towards that. So, all right, I'm going to click back over to the primary intro screen, and we'll start here in just a few seconds. It's a little under a minute to noon. We've got people joining us already watching the stream, which is great. Well, everybody, welcome to another BIM broadcast. My name is Shawn Zerbis, Technical Evangelist here at the BIM broadcast show. We're going to be joined today by a special guest. We've got Brian Levendowski of CTC Software Developers, and we're going to sit down and talk today a bit about how the BIM world and the civil world are really not that different. We're going to talk about how they kind of all mesh together and how civil is actually using BIM, but we're going to talk about what the misconceptions are here first. Just a note, we are keeping an eye over on the actual chat feed, so if you guys have feedback or additional questions for myself or Brian while we're talking today, by all means, type them in the chat. We'd love to make this a bit of a dialogue with you. So with that, Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on and being a guest here on BIM Broadcast.
Thanks, Shawn. Thanks, Shawn. Glad to be here. It's my first time, so you know I've got all kinds of things to share with.
Excellent.
With everyone, so.
It's always fun having BIM Broadcast virgins on the show. So, so let's talk a little bit about who you are and how you kind of got started in this field before we jump into the topic of civil, so we kind of understand what your background is. So you are, as I noticed by your title down there, a PE. So tell me about that, how you got started there.
Yeah. So I'm a civil engineer by trade, and I went to school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at the University of Minnesota. Got my civil engineering degree there, and I got into it just because I was one of those kids playing with Legos, always trying to build things, fix things. So that was my motivation, how I got into it.
Nice.
And so before CTC, I worked as a land surveyor for 4 years. Did a lot of construction staking, actually at MSP Airport, a lot of work there. And then I went into airport design for TKDA. I worked about 6 years there. And what brought me to CTC, I guess, was just, you know, I worked as an engineer practicing. There's a lot of technology there, and it was, you know, the solving of problems, designing of things, whatever it might be, with technology, with software, was like, seemed like the most exciting part of my job. That's what it felt like, and so that's what I went into consulting, software consulting that I'm doing now. So that's what landed me here, and I've been at CTC for 8 years about.
Nice. So, a lot of my guests on the BIM broadcast show, a lot of those are architectural or engineering on the building engineering side in nature. Many of them started with Legos as well, but in your case, you took Legos towards civil engineering. So I imagine as a kid, you were building bridges?
No, no, still just spaceships and
Nice.
little fire engines and whatever I could. But civil it's engineering on a large scale, right?
Yes.
And it's engineering that touches everyone. It's designing our city, our urban, our rural landscapes, our infrastructure. And it was just this, it just had this gravity to me that attracted me. Be it bridges, be it roadways, airports, you name it. It was just the size of that was kind of exciting to me. And so, yeah, that's why I
Excellent.
landed there.
Awesome. Awesome. So tell me a bit about your role at CTC. So you mentioned that you used to do civil engineering as a profession, right? You did the surveying,
Okay.
you worked at TKDA, you said, but now you're at CTC. Tell me more about what your roles are kind of now in the CTC environment.
Sure. Yeah, so I wear a few different hats at CTC. I guess my official title is support manager here. So I'm managing our team of application engineers. And with that, we're all pretty independent. We have our different specialties, be it architecture or civil or structural or you name it. But I'm supporting that team, new application engineers. I'm certainly training them on how to train others, how to give presentations, this kind of thing, how to continue to stay on top of new technology, new software. So that's kind of my official title there, but other hats I wear, I'm kind of the civil industry lead at CTC, I guess I would say, maybe just kind of, I help steer where do we go in the civil industry in terms of products or services that we do, things we're promoting, things we're teaching, training on, that sort of thing. I help lead that certainly. As part of that, we develop our own software. We make civil express tools, and I'm the product manager for that. So a lot of the ideas kind of come from customers. They come from in-house, and a lot of that stuff kind of comes through me. And I work with our development team to create our civil express tools. And then, when I started at CTC, I was an application engineer, and I'm still an application engineer. I'd say probably a third of my time, maybe a half of my time, is still on consulting. It's more at the kind of the project management level, but I'm still an application engineer at heart. And just this morning, I spent a few hours diving into some of our customers' templates and planning out some of their upcoming curriculum and things like that. So I never want to leave that. I want to always be involved on consultation sessions on some level with our customers, so I can always know what they're doing. Right. That's how I'm able to come away and figure out, how does CTC best serve our customers? Well, I got to be there with our customers to figure that out.
Exactly. So I think that the CTC guys need to get you a hat rack, so when you're doing different tasks, you put the right hat on.
I think so. But hats don't look good on me. So.
Well, yeah, it is what it is. So let's talk about two of those things. We're going to start with kind of the consulting side, because that's where I'm interested in primarily for today's major discussion. So when you're consulting with clients, it's not like previous companies you worked at individually and you got a set of experience there, right? Now you're talking to people across the nation in different civil firms and helping them refine their workflows to best level the tools at hand. So,
Certainly.
Right? I'm assuming?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So,
yeah.
So with that, I imagine you see a lot of issues that many of us run into, or many of the firms run into, with leveraging the civil tools and the concept now that we run into of BIM. So BIM, of course, is building information modeling. And I think all too frequently, a lot of the hype out there focuses on the physical structure that we see as a building, a house, a condo, an office structure. That's a building. But I think building information modeling should focus more on the verb. And in the case of roads and bridges, we build those, right? And there's a lot of information that backs that up. So what are you seeing in your consulting time as issues that people run into with this concept of BIM, or the lack of ability to implement it, or like all that whole ecosystem around problems?
Yeah. it's multifaceted. I work around technology a lot, and the technology plays a big role in this, right? And some of the software that we can touch on a bit later, some of it's better at kind of harnessing or supporting BIM concepts. Some of it doesn't do as good of a job. So it's while there might be some firm who's very kind of BIM progressive and BIM forward, they have a hard time moving forward with it because the technology just won't allow them to do it. On the flip side, um, some firms they may not want to embrace the BIM concept, but the software is at least ahead of them,
Right.
and it really is at least more BIM forward than their company is. And there's just that hesitancy or that challenge to change with technology. Um, those are kind of central, and there's a big spectrum there, but I'm always kind of talking about that with customers of ours. And it's not changing for change sake. It's not using technology just because we want to use technology or because it's fun. It's because it's a tool that can help us do our job better. And so I try to always get that conversation going with the customer and getting them to think and just challenge. And it doesn't mean accept every technology I put in front of them or suggest to them. It means let's have a conversation about it. Does this help me um, do my job better? Does it help me? If I agree with the concept of BIM, does this move me forward in that way?
So in the world of this whole civil space and GIS space, there's I think a gross misconception that there isn't actually BIM in that space. Tell
Yeah.
me what you do to help combat this concept that there isn't BIM.
Yeah, I think you brought up building as a noun, not a verb.
Right.
Some of it's just terminology. People, oh no, BIM, that's the folks using Revit and right, that's the
It's
building
the
people. And
architects. It's the plumbing
yeah,
and
yeah,
civil and mechanical engineers.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the concept of BIM is so much broader than just a software. It's funny that the role we're in as software consultants and BIM consultants, we often get many different questions from customers, and they say they want to buy a BIM,
Yeah.
or they
Can I
they
buy
want to get
BIM? I want to buy BIM
they want to get
tomorrow.
yeah they want to get training on BIM, or they want to implement BIM, or and it's a state of mind almost, right? Like
Right.
it's software. It's the way we carry out our projects. It's the way we communicate on our projects. It's a lot of different things, and um, it's right smack in the middle of the civil industry too. In general, I would say the embracing of the concept in the civil industry is probably about 5 years behind
Sure.
that of the architectural and what I'd call the building discipline. So uh, it's very applicable there, but for a number of the reasons that we've talked about and we'll continue to talk about, it's a few years behind,
Do you think
certainly.
that's because of industry culture, because of technology, or because of like education, maybe propaganda? Like what is kind of driving that delay in adoption or understanding?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is technology, and certainly Civil 3D. Let's take that. That's one of the primary Civil 3D or civil industry modeling tools. Um, Compared to something like Revit, it's not as powerful, right? It's not as powerful in a BIM kind of mindset. There's a lot of 3D modeling that goes on there, but you take Civil 3D, it's something that's very much um, it's built on AutoCAD, and so there's this kind of old crutch, if you will. Like I can always not use the new 3D tools. I can
Right.
just use my AutoCAD
Draw
tools, and
some
I can
lines.
I can draw some lines, right?
Yeah.
And just the simple difference of that, like I can open Civil 3D and I can do AutoCAD. I can't open Revit, for example, and do AutoCAD. I kind of need to do Revit, right?
Right.
And so the technology forces you into it. The I think the attitudes are different too. I work with people across the entire AEC industry, and the civil industry it's a little bit more of a good old boys industry, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of tradition there, um, and and so that I think the hesitancy to change is a little bit stronger than that in the architectural or the building focused industries. And so even if the software, which it's not, even if it was really good and just very much a BIM application, um, the attitudes need to move with that. And you run into it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem there, right? Like if all of us in the civil industry were very kind of BIM forward, and we're like, and Autodesk and some of these software makers would be riding right along with us, right? But on the flip side, we say, well, I can't do BIM in civil because the software doesn't do it, you know?
Right.
So it's what comes first. And I don't think either one. They kind of both need to move together at the same time.
But let's kind of pull it down to brass tacks, though. I mean, you're not saying that Civil 3D can't do BIM, because I think that by definition it can. At least at a low level, at least at an entry level, you can do BIM,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it can. I think if you talk to an everyday hardcore Revit user and then you plugged them into Civil 3D, you'd say, well, that's not a BIM application, you know.
Right.
But I would say that it's probably 75% there. Civil 3D and other applications like Infraworks or stuff coming from other manufacturers is changing every year. I mean, just the amount of information you can store in your models, the amount of exchanging you can do out of Civil 3D or out of Infraworks into other applications, into other disciplines, gets better every year. Does it happen all overnight? I wish it would, but it doesn't.
Never does for any industry.
Yeah, yeah.
Shoot, I mean,
But
Revit's taken it, what are we at now, 17, 18 years? Well,
yeah,
I guess it's been 14 or 15 years since Autodesk bought it from Original Technology, Revit Technology
sure.
Company, but I mean, it's still evolving. It didn't hit the ground as a perfect BIM application. It had potential,
Right,
but
right.
it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, and take Civil 3D, that came out in 2004. It essentially wasn't very usable until 2007.
Right.
So that's only about 10 years there. But even, in the 8 years I've been consultant in this industry, I've seen tremendous change. One of the main modeling objects in Civil 3D or in the civil industry in general in design software is the creation of a surface model or a tin model. We have all different kind of tool sets that create these tin models. Um, you take 6, 7 years ago, half the firms I talked to, they weren't making tins, they weren't making surfaces.
Right.
And some of you listening might say, "What do you mean? I've been making tins for 15 years." Well, you're the type of folks that tune into the BIM broadcast, But
Exactly.
there's a whole host of other firms out there that it's a fairly new thing to always create a surface model, be it proposed conditions or existing conditions. And so it's really come a long way, and the manufacturers of the software move along with it. So it's exciting to do, and it's the role we're in. We're right in between kind of the software manufacturers and the industry, and I just feel like we're always just kind of pushing the limits on both sides. Like
Yep.
I get a real kind of progressive company to really exploit the software and really think of it as a BIM piece of software and get as much as they can out of it. And we hit limits on it, right?
Oh, of
Right. And
course.
then of course I go back to Autodesk and others, and I say, look, you got to get your software to do this, right? This is what the people are asking for. We're trying to make BIM software for civil. This is what it needs to do. So it's really fun to push those limits back and forth between the provider and then the users of the software.
And actually, you're really vocal on that front, are you not? You get to interface with the programmers of Civil 3D and Autodesk quite frequently.
I do. Fortunately, I'm able to go out to Autodesk. I go there once a year, and I meet with their Civil 3D and Infraworks product managers. There's a team of about 20 of us that do this, that go out there, and we meet with their programmers, and we test upcoming releases. But more importantly, we kind of talk about where should Infraworks, where should BIM and Civil be in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of kind of brainstorming happening there. And of course, we all leave every meeting going, yes, it's all great. Do it all now.
Woohoo!
Program it. Make it all now, right? And obviously that's not possible, but I really enjoy it. I get to help be a part of that team that really kind of steers where the software goes.
Excellent, excellent. Now let's talk about some of those tools. I mean, you've mentioned tools like Infraworks here. I'm going to pull this up on screen here in just a moment,
Sure.
and you'll be able to kind of see what I'm seeing. So, Civil 3D we've mentioned a few times. Infraworks is kind of a newish tool. Tell me about how Infraworks is different than Civil 3D and kind of what space you see it fitting best into, so I can understand more about this.
Right. So Infraworks is it just visually, you just look at it compared to Civil 3D, and Civil 3D is AutoCAD based, so you see vector type information, and you can turn on render patterns and so forth. But you can't get it to look like what you see on the screen here. And this is just the Infraworks homepage here, but
Right.
it's very much a visual design tool. And Autodesk is working to bring this to a truly, to very much a design tool, a detailed design tool. You know, it started out as very much a visualization tool and a conceptual design tool. And a lot of people are using it for that, but they're trying to push the limits on making this truly a detailed design tool. And what's kind of interesting about it, and I really like what Autodesk is doing with this, while they're pushing the envelope on it, they're not making Infraworks a planned production tool. They've put a couple little tool sets in there, but it's not a planned production tool. You know, so a lot of people see Infraworks and they're like, well, my spot elevation labels aren't there, and my labels for this, and I can't make my schedules, and I can't do all this. And it's, you know, right now we have to deliver our projects and construction documents, right? But they're trying to push the limit with Infraworks and make this about delivering a model.
Sure.
And, you know, and this doesn't happen overnight, but I think there's some active resistance on Autodesk's part to not make this a planned production tool. It's a detailed design modeling tool.
Right.
And so they're putting that effort into detailed design to really scope out design of a complicated intersection or whatever it might be. But it's not about printing that intersection and having 300 little spot elevations on it. It's about creating that 3D model and to go and construct and build from that and not from a set of plans.
Yep. So it's actually kind of dual purpose. It's communication of design intent, but also the future potential of construction from a model-based construction, as opposed to document, you know, two-dimensional based construction. And what's the reception like on that? Like, how is that going? Are there firms that are being progressive and leveraging it in that capacity that you've seen?
Yeah, so there's a lot of firms leveraging it for a spectrum of uses. I mentioned a couple: conceptual design and visualization. But more and more firms are trying to use it to take their designs to at least maybe perhaps a 50% level. Now, your question: are people leveraging this? Are they using the model to build, you know, construct their projects? Are the contracts around those models? By and large, they're not. They're not. And be it coming out of Infraworks or Civil 3D or a similar platform, even if we have really detailed surfaces, the industry isn't ready to fully embrace, you know, contractual agreements around a digital model. There's a little bit of it. The Wisconsin DOT, there's a couple other municipalities I've seen pushing the envelope on it, and it's really a cool topic. And in fact, you know, I host discussion panels at CTC's Midwest University every year. In the last 2 years, we've had some good conversations on this, a big group of people. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, everyone loves this concept. Let's just make a model. Let's just share that with the builder and the other parties involved there, right? And then it's always like, well, what if they build it wrong, right? That's what I need the print for. And there's no easy answers on this, and I'm not saying I have them, but it's always a very engaging conversation because people are like, well, this would be really good if I could just send them my tin model, right? But I can and I do, right? In fact, that's becoming a requirement all the time, is that the designer has to provide the contractor their tin model, their surface model. But at the same time, at the end of the day, they won't assign liability to it. It's like, well, here's the DWG, but it could all be wrong, and it's not my fault, right? What's on the plan set, that's what governs, right? And this is not anything unique to the civil industry, but it's
that's all industries. I mean, the model-based construction for architecture is only first really taking off in a large way as well for architecture and building engineering. So, I mean, it kind of surprises me though. I feel like in the world of civil, like we've had automated machine guidance for a while. And it kind of feels like we should be further along with using the model as the point of reference more so than the documentation. It feels like human error is much more prone to documents than it would be from a tin, from that triangulated irregular network or surface model.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my perspective. I don't know, but then I don't drive dozers, so I have no idea.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You bring up machine guidance, right? And this is GPS equipment connected to dozers and graders and you plug in a surface model, so to speak, and and it just kind of grades out the site. You in a lot of in sub-industries within the civil industry, you can't hardly compete without machine guidance.
Right.
You absolutely need this. The sticking point is who creates those models and who is liable for them being right.
Right.
So the designers will create these and they'll provide them to contractors, but by and large, that contractor has to, if they're provided them, make sure they're correct. But still, what I see most of the time is contractors they're creating them on their own.
Sure.
Perhaps they're taking one from the designer and then they're having to modify it or tweak it for their needs. Um, it's a complicated thing, but it's a really cool concept to work towards.
Let's be real about this. The world of civil 3D and civil engineering and automation and the world of building and architecture and building engineering and automation are really quite parallel, right? We're kind of having those exact same discussions on the architecture and building side going, I'm a contractor. I can't trust the architect's model, so I'm going to remodel it myself. Or the architect saying, well, here's the model, but I'm not liable for this. So I don't think the conversation's that much different. Maybe civil isn't that far behind the 5-year mark, like you were mentioning. Maybe we're right on par.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe it's fair to say the software is a few years behind, but not necessarily the kind of perspectives and the attitudes and the desire to move towards that more BIM centric concept.
Right.
So, yeah, good point.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Infraworks. I know that in daily production, you've also, you mentioned already that you kind of spearhead the CTC Civil Information Modeling Toolset, the SIM suite of tools. Can you tell me a little bit about what this can do? And if people are interested, they can always, get a hold of you and talk a bit more about what SIM tools can do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's a suite of software that CTC makes, and I lead the development of it. And it's all these concepts we've been talking about. We're trying to fill in those areas, those gaps within Civil 3D that don't, or maybe are inhibiting us bringing the software to much more of a design modeling, BIM-centric type software. For example, one tool we just released, there's a set of tools called pipe networks in Civil 3D, and it's all about design of underground piping systems, be it storm, sanitary, you name it. And the tools are 3D tools with a bunch of smart attribute data in them, but they're not design tools. It's almost like if you're working in AutoCAD and you just had a bunch of 3D blocks.
Right.
Well, they're 3D. You could even give them some attributes, but they're not very smart. They don't know that they're a pipe, and they don't know that they're a manhole, and right. And the way you would design those things, the tools don't really lend themselves to it. So I think if you scroll down, you might be able to grab a screenshot or something.
Oh, I'm going to screen first before I can scroll down here. So that's the the pipe.
It's one called Pipe Designer. Yeah, I think we've got it on there.
Probably alphabetical is my guess. There we go. Pipe Designer.
Yes. Grab that screenshot there on the left, that button there.
Oh, screenshot. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and what we've done is we provided this interface that will read an entire run of pipes and manholes and allow you to design and basically an Excel interface. Whereas before you were very much like picking each little part and say, make this one this elevation, make this one this slope. And that's not the way civil engineers work.
Right.
They design entire runs of pipes and structures based on some common characteristics. And so it allows us to really kind of control entire sets of our storm and sanitary models all at once. So that's the kind of stuff we're trying to fill in with the SIM project suite is to really make this a modeling and design piece of software.
Right.
And not like this vector kind of bunch of blocks and, kind of, it might even be 3D information, but it's not very smart, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to make that software smarter. So it's pretty cool. We've got another one coming out that I'm really excited about, and it's, you think about BIM, what is BIM? And, we talk about the I in BIM. It's this information in our models, right? If there's no I, what do you have? You have a giant AutoCAD solid, right?
Exactly.
Right. Well, if there's a lot of information there, you can do a lot of things with that. And one of the areas that Civil 3D struggles with a bit is pulling information out, basically creating your legends
right.
from one sheet or one design to the next, pulling your legends, your schedules out of it. Revit does a great job at this. Civil 3D struggles here and there. And so we're releasing this tool that will simultaneously read dozens of different types of Civil 3D objects and spit out a legend or a schedule based on only the things you've inserted or designed in that project.
Right.
You know, for Revit users, that might seem like, oh my God, you don't have that? Uh, oh, no, we
Yeah,
don't have it, and we need it. And
but
so,
until we had Revit, you know, we had AutoCAD Architecture, I believe, is the tool, or Architectural Desktop for those really older guys.
yeah,
That's when I started on back in the day. But you know, that was that's kind of the same thing. Like Civil 3D, actually, in Architectural Desktop or AutoCAD Architecture is very much the same. It's not. I mean, it has a lot of information, and I think actually AutoCAD Architecture for a while, or maybe even still, was considered a building information modeling tool because you can model the information. You can work with the information, but in the Civil 3D, you can model it, but it's difficult to pull it. And so with the tool set, the civil information modeling tools that you guys are putting together there at CTC, it sounds like you're taking it more from just an information modeler to also turning it into a civil parametric modeler.
right.
So it's making it much easier for users to jump in and design and be more efficient. So they're not doing the tedium, the day-to-day like data entry, and data extraction and data management. You get to be an engineer and design.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, why do we sometimes take this time to generate these information-rich models? It's not necessarily always faster to generate those, right? Than if I were to just draw some lines, right? But it's the information I get out of it, you know. So when I'm trying to I'm working with customers and say, no, you should really model this out in a corridor or something like that, they'll say, well, why? I could just draw this just as quickly. I say, well, the information you get out of it, and they say, well, but I can't create my legends right from that, not exactly the way I want. And so it's like that was glaring for us, and so we put this. We're actually partnering with a customer on it, and we're looking to release that in a couple months here. So it really kind of hits home on that BIM concept and why you would create models like this, even just within the design team. It's about that information that comes out of it. So yeah, really looking forward to that one.
Excellent. In fact, I think, if I recall correctly, all the tools you guys put together there at CTC are all really customer-driven tools, right? It's not like something you guys just come up with a magic idea. Usually, it's because of interactions with the clients.
Yeah, they're either a combination of a partnership with a client or they're coming from ideas from CTC's Civil Express Tools Advisory Panel.
Right.
And so that's a team of experts we have out there that we basically run ideas by, and they help us steer the direction to go with these tools. Much in the same way that Autodesk brings myself and others like me out there to help them steer the direction of the software.
So now we're kind of getting closer towards the end of our show here today. I want to kind of change gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about some of the issues and some of the tools that exist out there. Now, what gets you excited in the world of BIM as it relates to civil? What's kind of like driving you going, wow, this is really cool, or this is an upcoming technology that's kind of got you really excited?
Right. I think we touched on it, and I guess I'll mention it again, and it's this concept of moving away from paper, right? And I don't have the answers on it, but or all the answers. I like to think I do sometimes, but I don't. But the concept of moving away from that would just open the floodgates for multiple industries. And it's complicated. I get it. It's some of the conversations I've had. People have said, well, the only way this is happening is with multiple lawsuits, right? Someone has to take a leap and go out there and they gotta
risk their business.
They gotta risk it, and then there's got to be a lawsuit. And coming out of a lawsuit, there's some laws and regulations and some precedents set there, right? And so that's one of the things that it's not right around the corner, but something I'm pretty excited about. I'm always kind of, whether it doesn't necessarily directly influence or shape how someone works exactly today, but it's this kind of goal out there, right, that I always try to keep in my customer's head, that this is what we're going towards, right? Frame that when you're creating your existing conditions legend or whatever it is. I always have that concept in mind,
Absolutely. So let's change topics here once again. This is a portion of the show that I always enjoy jumping into and kind of seeing a reaction. So given a 2-minute soapbox, Brian,
Yeah,
topic of your choice, right? Doesn't have to be civil related, anything you want. 2-minute soapbox, what would you want to say to the world?
yeah. I would, I live and breathe technology, whether it's in the civil industry, the AC industry as a whole. Um, and it's, when I think about technology, I think of it, it's a relative term. And what do I mean by that is like, well, when we say the term technology, it's what we're doing right now. We have this video broadcast. Oh, that's technology, right? Civil 3D, Revit, Infraworks, that's technology, right? Well, a sewing machine was technology when that came out, right? That was new technology. You don't call that technology now. That's just some old tool, right? That you don't want to have to use, right? Um, and so what would I say to people? My soapbox, don't be afraid of technology. Technology is a relative term, right? Don't think of it as something that new generation is using, or those new engineers and those new architects are using, right? And to me, what technology is it's just this result of this like continued pursuit to do our jobs better, right? They're just tools that come out of our own creativity.
Right.
They're not the enemy of any of us. Technology 300 years ago, there was cutting edge technology then. There was 50 years
Yeah,
ago,
they were
there was.
making blades.
Yeah, I
That's
know,
cutting
I
edge as
know.
you can get, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's not a new thing.
Right.
Technology is not a new thing. It's relative to where we are in our own advancement and relative to the tools we have around us. And so, um, it's very much it's in my job, it's with my family, it's with my friends. It's like, well, don't resist that just because it's something new or because it has a stigma as new technology. That's a byproduct of humanity trying to live their lives better, more efficiently, more safely, you name it. So
Yep.
it's something. Yeah, I could talk hours and hours on it.
Well, of
Yeah.
course, right? We only had 2 minutes for that,
But 2
so.
minutes.
All right. Well, Brian, I really appreciate your time today. Before we jump off real quick, I want to mention 2 upcoming events that I'm aware of. And if there's other ones that you want to jump in and talk about, Brian, feel free to. But, I know that the Built conference by RTC events is coming up very soon here. It's August 9th through the 11th, very shortly. If you haven't already signed up or you want to go, it's a fantastic event to talk about BIM. And Brian, I thought I heard that you were submitting a class for that this year. Did that go through?
No, I did not
Okay.
submit one. A lot of other folks at CTC did, and are going to be teaching there. But myself, no, I didn't. I have
Okay.
spoke there in the past.
Right. You and I actually co-taught a class there in the past, I believe,
Yeah,
about Revit and Civil 3D and how they can talk together. So I
yeah,
think that class still gets referenced to this day. We get calls about that on the regular. So
it
how
does.
do
We
I do
taught
this
one at
thing?
AU as well, and
Yep.
yeah, yeah,
Yep.
it's still very much a relevant topic, and that process is getting a little better. So I'm hopeful there.
Yep. And speaking about AU, that the classes submissions for AU just ended, and voting is now up and live. So if you want to have input as to which classes get accepted at AU, and of course you're probably going to want to go to that event, make sure you go up there and start voting for classes. And I know all the guys at CTC would love if you voted for theirs. So if you know them and you like their topics, vote for them. And if you don't, well, whatever. All right. Well, again, did you have any events that are on the civil side, Brian, that you wanted to talk about that are up and coming in the near future?
No, no, I was going to highlight both these same ones. So
Perfect.
absolutely.
Excellent. Well, once again, everybody, we really do appreciate the time that you give us here in BIM Broadcast, and leave us feedback. We watch that. If you have guests that you want to suggest for our show, or you want to be a guest on the show, drop us a line. We're here to bring to the industry topics that are interesting. We would love to have you on and talk about something in your line of work that relates to BIM. So with that, y'all have a great day, and we'll see you in the next BIM broadcast.